The current state of Hamilton is really bad. It's definitely gone downhill in the past 3 to 4 years. But my problem is the way Hamilton advertises itself. When newcomers and buyers think about Hamilton, they imagine the waterfalls and the waterfront trails and the up-and-coming vibe of a city next to Toronto. Developers call it the Brooklyn of the Greater Toronto Area. Agents call it a hidden gem. The Toronto spillover buyers call it affordable. All of that is technically true, but the reality is very different. Because to actually enjoy Hamilton, you have to make major sacrifices. You either need to live with 3 or 4 roommates for years just to save up for a down payment, or you need an extremely high salary. And even if you're making 6 figures, even if you cracked $100,000 a year, you still have to live modestly. You can't go out every single weekend, you can't overspend, you have to cut corners constantly. Since 2020, Hamilton has gone very downhill. The city's reputation isn't growth, it's decline. Encampments in parks, vacant storefronts downtown, crime and overdoses up, people leaving faster than they're arriving. The dream of Hamilton as a revitalized steel city feels like a cruel joke. Is Hamilton a bad influence on GTA? Some frustrated locals think so. And if you ask them, they'll tell you Hamilton is to blame for its own mess. There's a culture here that's at least partially responsible for the state of the city now. To be fair, Hamilton's not alone. Housing and affordability is a national issue. But Hamilton has its own unique disaster. During COVID, waves of Toronto buyers flooded the market. They outbid locals on everything. They treated Hamilton as a discount suburb, not a city. Prices doubled almost overnight, but the housing supply never caught up. So now we're stuck with crisis. If you want to rent in Hamilton, you'll be throwing most of your salary into it. If you want to live near the core, good luck. You're going to sacrifice either your space, your savings, or your sanity. I just had a friend tell me that their rent's going up from $2,100 to $2,400 a month for a 2-bedroom condo. In the downtown core, you can find a room for $800, but it's basically a glorified den. No curtains, no privacy, no window, no door. What the hell is going on here? Hamilton has had a real estate problem, but nobody really talks about it nationally. The grim reality is young Hamiltonians can't afford to live in their own city anymore. If you're a Gen Z or millennial working an entry-level job here, you're not renting a 1-bedroom apartment. You're either at home with your parents or living with 4 or 5 roommates. Because here's the math. The average 1-bedroom apartment in Hamilton is over $1,800 a month. Minimum wage is somewhere around $17. Work 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That's about 35 grand before taxes. And more than 2/3 of that is wiped out just by rent. No car, no food, no savings, gone. Meanwhile, the average home price in Hamilton is still around $760,000. That's after prices have already dropped this year. Step back into 2015, that same house was under $400,000. So even after the so-called crash, we're still nearly double. What do you actually get for that money? A detached house that needs work? A semi that's barely updated? Or a townhouse that was once considered entry-level, but now eats your entire paycheck? This isn't Toronto, this isn't Vancouver, this is Hamilton. And it feels completely unaffordable. And the rental market, it's a nightmare. Competition for even the smallest units is insane. People show up to viewings with deposit checks ready. Some landlords demand months of rent up front, others openly discriminate, choosing only certain groups of tenants and rejecting everyone else. Meanwhile, real wages haven't moved. You can work in healthcare, you can work in finance, you can work in trades, and still be locked out of the market because the numbers don't add up. If you're a young person in Hamilton, owning a home feels like a fantasy. Not a goal, not a plan, a fantasy. So what happens? People either stay stuck in the same place or they leave altogether. They move out west, they move out east, or they just keep renting until their parents pass a house down. That's the Hamilton dream now. Not working your way up, not saving and buying, just waiting. And that's why the market feels broken. Prices remain high, but quality of life stays low. Nobody wants to pay Toronto money to live beside boarded up storefronts, half-collapsed buildings, and streets lined with encampments. And that's exactly where we are. If you're a homeowner right now, you're stuck in a tough spot too, because selling means taking a loss, but staying means bleeding cash into a mortgage. I know this market is tough, but let me ask you this. If you could sell your house and buy a new one that's more suitable to your life and earn $25,000 or more in cashback incentives, would that help you? If so, click the link and find out how. It's no secret that Hamilton house prices have skyrocketed. The average home today still hovering around 760 grand, and that's after the market drop. Step back just a few years ago, 2010 to 2020, and houses here went from 300,000 to over 800,000. That's not growth, that's an explosion. Meanwhile, incomes did not move. According to reports, home prices in Canada's major cities rose 168% since 2000, but young people's incomes only 4%. Hamilton fits that pattern perfectly. Minimum wage went from $11 to $17, but house prices more than doubled. So the math doesn't work. Not in Toronto, not in Hamilton, not anywhere in Ontario. And here's the kicker. To buy a house in Hamilton today, you need a household income of at least $150,000. That's with savings, that's with down payment, and how many people in their 20s and 30s actually check both boxes? Almost none. So what happens instead? People get trapped renting, they pay landlords more than half their take-home income, they save nothing, they build no equity, and every year they fall further behind. So you start to ask yourself, what's the point? Work a decent job, save every penny, and still live in a shoebox. That's not progress, that's punishment. And this is where Hamilton has landed. Priced like a global city, functioning like a failing one. Young people aren't building lives here, they're barely surviving. And for many, the only real plan is to leave. So where does Hamilton actually fit? If you break Canada down into tiers of cities, you've got tier 1 cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. Biggest population, biggest jobs, biggest paychecks. Tier 2, Calgary, Ottawa, Halifax. Still solid, still livable, still growing. Tier 3, Saskatoon, St. John's, Winnipeg. Smaller, cheaper, not glamorous, but at least affordable. Hamilton was supposed to be climbing the ladder. The Brooklyn of the GTA, the affordable alternative, the comeback story. But what actually happened here? Hamilton got priced like a tier 1 city while delivering tier 3 problems. High housing costs, low incomes, crumbling downtown, encampments spreading throughout the parks, storefronts boarded up, crime rates rising. That's the contradiction. Pay Toronto money, live with Detroit issues. And now your average Hamiltonian can't afford Toronto, but they also can't afford Hamilton. So they're stuck, either trapped in a rental or fleeing to smaller towns with no plan. And this isn't just numbers, it's culture, it's survival. Young people don't see a future here. They don't see stability, they see debt, they see decline, they see an endless grind just to stay in the same place. And if you zoom out, the question gets darker. What happens to a city when its own kids can't afford to stay? What happens when families leave, when jobs follow, when downtown empties out because nobody wants to pay $500,000 to live beside a collapsing building? That is where Hamilton is heading. Not renewal, not rebirth, a slow bleed. A city drifting towards being unlivable. And if you own a home right now, you feel it too. Because yes, prices are down, but unaffordability is worse. There are buyers, but fewer than ever, because there are options, but every option feels like a loss. That's the trap Hamilton is in. Too expensive for locals, too broken for outsiders, and too hollowed out to fix overnight. So the future of Hamilton, unless something changes, it's not growth. It's stagnation, it's decline, it's frustration on repeat. And that's why conversation matters. Because pretending Hamilton is booming isn't helping anyone. The reality is that people are struggling to rent, struggling to buy, struggling to imagine a future here. And if you're a homeowner in this city, I know the market is tough, but let me ask you this. If you could sell your home and buy a home that you actually desire, earning $25,000 or more in cashback incentives, would that help you? If so, click the link below and find out how.